This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium.
Episode 96,
GenCon 2019 tournament.
Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson.
Seen any good movies lately?
I finally saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Should we make people mad again?
Ooh, let's spoil it. No, just kidding. Let's not spoil it. But what did you think? I heard your wife loved it.
Yeah, my wife loved it. I thought it was good. It's not my favorite Tarantino movie, but I liked it.
Mm-hmm. But you're not a big Tarantino guy.
I think he's a great director and a dumb person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
All. That's all. That's my take.
I have heard that he is a terror at like serving him or like
oh yeah,
if he's at a place that can kind of be
right.
a problem.
Nothing about his personality seems approachable, warm, friendly, or good.
Yeah, I mean he's a Texan. Well, he's actually not
wow,
a Texan. I think
just
he's
threw
from
everyone in Texas under the bus.
Well, I mean, you know how people from Texas are, and I love Texas. So I think he's from Tennessee originally, but and then he lived in Los Angeles. But to me, he's very Austin, Texas.
You know what's funny is this intro is going the way that it was, and the only thing we talked about for the intro was how we were going to talk about how the show was really going to get back on the rails.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing we did.
All right. Let's get back on. There's a rail right here, and I'm going to step up on it. This is going to be the last of our series of episodes having to do with GenCon.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of cover all the stuff we haven't covered thus far, including mostly a pretty cool YouTube video you can check out.
Yeah.
What is that video?
It's up within kind of a week. I don't know. Maybe it was like a week and a couple days. But the GenCon 2019 Tournament Championship videos are out. We did it by round. You should 100% go watch them. It's very digestible in small increments. And yeah, it's really, I can't even express how happy I am with it and and the response to it. And it's just the whole process was really worth it this year. Whereas last year was sort of this story of like, it was hard and we learned a lot and it took a long time to do it. And I feel weird. This year is like the opposite in every single imaginable way.
Yep. So, take that, y'all. It's already out. You don't have to wait a year. You're not waiting a year for it. You already got it. We already done with it.
And I just think so the other thing with that too is we have the footage to do more stuff with it. And I do intend on doing that, but now I don't feel pressure to do it. But most importantly, people have been asking about like interviews, and we did do interviews with the top 3 finalists. So once you've watched everything, hopefully here in not too long, I'll get those interviews out, and you can get a little bit more info about just how the players felt from their perspective. So we'll have those out in the YouTube feed somewhat soon for you to enjoy. And then over time, maybe some sort of highlight reel or condensed version of the game or something like that. That's my goal with the footage we captured, is to be able to do something a little bit shorter for people who don't want to spend 7 hours watching a TI game. But it is worth it. I'll say that much. It is a worthwhile 7-hour game.
Yeah, we lucked out. It was a good game. Like, it always feels like kind of a miracle when that happens.
Yeah. But turns out when you get really good players together, a good game happens. So
that's true. It does make that very likely if all the players are good. And they definitely were. So yeah, if you have not checked out that video, I totally encourage you to do it. Our setup for making that video was unheard of, and I think I have to give all of the props to you, Matt, and EJ.
Yeah.
For that one, and if everyone at home could be doing a little golf clap right now for the two of them, because literally,
snap.
No, I have never seen a video that covered Twilight Imperium like that. It is one of a kind, and I am even though my part in the technical aspects of it were nil, I feel very, very proud of it.
Yeah, Hunter's more of an idea guy.
I'm an idea guy, and I'm here for color and to make sure that things are fun and interesting. And
you don't get things like Water Bottle Gate or just, I guess we called it Watergate 2019 and Carrot Salesman, and you don't get stuff like that without Hunter. So
that's true.
That's my favorite part of those videos, is just hanging in there for the weird stuff that happens at GenCon.
Right.
But hey, do we want to talk about like the rest of Gen Con? We have not touched. So last year we did like a whole breakdown of how all the prelims games went. And we haven't done that this year. And that's because, well, we can't do like a in-depth overview of everything because we really didn't sit down and watch every single game. That was like our big change up from last year, right?
Yeah, and last year I still have like a notebook, or actually I think you took my notebook.
Yeah, I have your notebook.
So there was a notebook of just like I wrote down every single action every player did for like 2 of the prelims games and then the tournament game.
Yeah.
So last year, like we covered those in depth, but we can kind of give you some like, kind of overall feelings. The first day of the prelims was pretty weird.
Yes.
Because they did not, and this is a lesson for next year. If you do not make it into the tournament, show up in the morning to try and because they had 2 4-player games, meaning there were 4 people that didn't show up for prelims games.
And not only that, there weren't any generic ticket holders there at that time. It was just like a weird first day of the con where nobody could get up. We were included in that. We didn't show up until like, I don't know, 8:30 or something. But Blarknob, runs a tight ship, and if you're not there at 8 a.m. sharp, you're kicked out. And nobody was there with generics, which meant 2 of the first 3 prelim games were 4-player games. They opted to do a 6-player game and 2 4-player games, rather than what the reverse of that is 2 5-player games and a, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Something, 2 5-player games and a 4-player game or something. But they did 2 4-players and 1 6-player, which meant like the first round was really weird. Because 4-player games just play very, very, very differently. And what was cool was, all the players were aware of that and definitely leaned into it and played, factions where it's like, okay, all I got to do is like sit here, accrue my stuff, and I'll probably do all right. We saw a lot of Jolnar and a lot of Soul this year, just like always. It wasn't as much as last year. I think last year there was a Jolnar and a Soul in every single game.
Every single game, I think. At least had a Jolnar.
Yeah, this year I think lacked a few souls. I don't think there was a soul in every game, which was a little bit surprising. But we've really seen the hate on Soul pick up over the last year or so.
Right.
Especially since the Patreon tournament. Even though Soul wasn't a big player in that, it's just like people don't care. Last year they got crushed. But something I think we didn't see this year is seeing them get crushed. Right.
In the competitive map building stuff, we also didn't see as much nastiness, I feel like.
Right. Which is in one way a good thing. That's the nastiness. I think some groups are really used to nasty map building, but I think people who have gotten very, very good at competitive map building will tell you that your focus should always be on making your slice as good as it can be and focusing on hurting other people later, because if you hurt someone, they're gonna try to hurt you in the map building, and that's gonna be worse than any negative effect you put on somebody else. You just need to get your stuff down. So yeah, we saw a lot less of that, but what that meant was we saw Jolnar do pretty well and Soul do pretty well. We remember 4 of the games, and of those 4, 2 were Jolnar and 1 was Soul. So, already looking at half the games being those powerhouse factions that didn't get, dealt with early enough and were able to just kind of carry the late game.
Right. One thing that was really cool about the prelims was seeing old faces, seeing people that we had met at the Gen Con tournament last year.
Yeah, right.
We got to see GenCon Joey, who sadly did not make it through his prelims game, but and actually I don't think he got to play as SAR. I think he was playing as some other faction. So it was kind of like, I don't know. It didn't feel like he was quite in his element.
My memory says he was L1. I think.
Yeah, I think it was L1. We saw, or what we actually we did not get to see it. I want to go ahead and mention this. We really missed Jimbov because he did not get to make it this year, and he is always such like a delight to see him.
He's
play.
just like your all-time favorite player. I mean, it sounds like...
I think it's just because I always root for whenever I would watch like esports stuff, I will always root for the people that play like the weird character that doesn't really do that well on that level, but they elevate it through their own play.
Right.
And with Jimbov always focusing on Arborek, something that I mean that's a faction that literally no one played.
Right.
Like at all, right? Like I don't think they had a single Arborek in a single game.
There was one Muat, but in terms of like the lower tier factions, not a single Arborek for sure.
Yeah, and in general, this all trended pretty high tier. Honestly, Unaligned Magi kind of messes that up a bit because he plays as Necro.
Yeah, but if you ask him, he will tell you Necro is high tier, so it kind of comes eye of the beholder.
But I think even he would recognize that overall, that's not how people see you Necro.
Definitely.
But yeah, so that was great. We saw GenCon Paul, who spoilers, was the winner of the 2018 GenCon final, and he actually did not make it to the finals, which was that's in my opinion, as a tournament organizer, that's kind of what you want to see.
Yeah,
personally.
Right.
It's like,
especially with
everything
it being,
has changed. Basically.
Yeah, him being a person who's made it to the past 4 finals, I believe, or like 4 out of 5, or he's been to the finals almost every single year, and so this is the first year in a long time he hasn't been to the finals, which really I think says one thing more than anything else, and that's the pool of talent in TI has increased a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Because for Paul to not be able to make it means like he was up against lots of stiff competition, not one player bested him. It was like, he was in a tough game.
He was in a tough game. He was sitting next to Unaligned Magi and was complaining about being his neighbor.
He hated it. Yeah, he came up to us a couple times and was like, "This sucks, and I hate this guy. I love him, but I hate being next to him and playing against his meta," which is, I think, how most people feel when they play against Unaligned Magi.
Right. And that game, their prelims game in general was a little bit controversial because it ended with a king make.
And
support
we
for
should
the
back up too, because there's so much going on there, and honestly, it kind of was a stir on the Discord for a little bit, and we're not going to get into like overly dramatic things with it because just whatever. But this was the only game that was going to time. Almost every other game finished, 4 or 5 hours of the 6-hour time limit. And this is the downside of Gen Con is we're kind of required in those prelim games to have a 6-hour time limit, which means at 6 hours, they call the game. And what happened in this game was, because all the players were very good, it was a very tight race in the end. And the thing we learned is calling a game at time has really weird implications, because depending on when you call that game,
like what phase you're in,
there's a different tiebreaker. So what happened in this game was Nalu was in the game, which meant, and they were at 9 points. And so if the game ends, if the 6-hour mark gets hit during the action phase or technically the status phase, then Nalu will win, just because by virtue of being 0 in initiative. That's the tiebreaker in TI4, and that's it. But what was happening was Unaligned Magi, Necro, was the speaker, which meant that if the game ended in the agenda phase or the strategy phase, then speaker token is the tiebreaker. So because there are 2 different tiebreakers, it came down to who is the person that would get it in a tiebreaker scenario. And the issue that then came up was the game gets crazy in those last 30 minutes, and the moderators start moving people along really, really fast, because what they don't want is someone to game the system, right? They don't want someone to stall everybody out and keep. They didn't want Necro to stall out the agenda phase and just like be like, I don't want to vote. I can't think of who I want to vote for.
To his credit, he did not attempt to do.
He played very honorably and went with the moderators in that regard, which meant they burned through. I mean, it was the fastest agenda phase I've seen in my life. It was literally like a 7-minute agenda phase because they were coming up on the wire. But that's when it started to feel really weird, right? Which is like, it feels like the moderators are dictating who's going to win this game then, because it only comes down to how fast do they force everyone to play that we come to a resolution here. So already it was starting to feel really itchy and stinky and not good and just very weird. And so then what ended up happening is they get through the agenda phase and it starts to look apparent that, okay, Nalu's going to win. And Paul, from last year's game, had an available support for the throne. And if you ask him about it, he will tell you that he had made a deal to Necro earlier in the game that was to later give a support for the throne. And he wanted to hold true to his word. And despite it being king-making, if you look at it from the perspective of, well, the moderators are almost king-making in this situation, so we are like completely outside of the bounds of normal decision-making. He decided he didn't think it was fair that the game was being rushed so fast, and he knew that he had a part of a bargain to uphold, so he thought the only honorable thing for him to do in that situation was give Necro the support for the throne, which is, I mean, super unfortunate for the Nalu player, which was a player known as Necro Firewall. He was basically kind of getting robbed a victory that was, just this really, really weird suspect situation. So all of that is to kind of say, like, when you introduce win conditions outside of the scope of the game, things just get really weird no matter how you cut it. And even, I mean, last year they had one prelims game that went to time as well where really, really weird stuff happened. It wasn't as weird as this, but these time limits make for really weird situations, and I think we as a community are learning a little bit more about that, and I know Blarknob has already said that they will probably adjust next year and make some changes into how they want to structure that, because it just feels dirty for it to be gamed in any way.
I think the reason that it feels dirty is that it would have been, so like it wasn't even the last half hour. It was like they were going into the agenda phase with like 15 minutes, because I remember thinking like this could feasibly, like, the fact that somebody could have filibustered for the win, and he wasn't about to do it because it didn't seem like the honorable way to do it, but he could have. He could have just been like, no, I'm going to filibuster this right now and then win the game because it's going to go to time in the agenda phase.
Right. And the bigger thing, too, though, is you have to consider what the mods were trying to do. I'm not giving the mods heat saying, oh, they were deciding the game. What they were trying to do is open up the opportunity for, if we at least get it into the action phase, everyone might get a turn. And if someone's got a secret objective, they might win it in a normal way. Or like the person with Imperial might be able to pop it and get the points they need. If we can get it to a normal scoreable position, someone might actually win it. It came too close to the wire where they didn't really get to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like, you don't have all day to do this, so like there's gonna be a game that gets kind of unfortunate like that. I actually kind of respect what GenCon Paul did in that at least the decision was made without it feeling like kind of an arbitrary tiebreaker thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was like somebody made a call, and that call frustrated somebody else a lot, and probably frustrated, people that feel strongly about kingmaking. But like, to me, it felt just as, I would have felt just as weird if it had gone to time. Like, I wouldn't have felt any less weird.
The support for the throne exists as a mechanic, and we have to just accept that. And this game ended with a game mechanic and not this new now, it was influenced by the weird arbitrary rule, but it was not decided by the weird arbitrary rule. Ooh, hey, fun update. The other two winners, it was an extra and another soul. So if you're keeping score, 2 souls, 2 Jolnars, Necro, and extra. Worth noting that extra win was in one of the 4-player games, which is certainly a much better situation for extra. For those of you wondering, how could an extra win in a tournament game? There's your answer.
I agree. Cool. Well, so let's talk about what it was like to shoot the unless we have any other prelims games we want.
The only other thing I would say is, in general, the prelims and the first 2 days of Gen Con were super, super fun because just having the community there was really cool. And the community feels a lot more tight-knit now. Last year, it was sort of just like, I don't know, we're all people that are sort of into TI. And this year, it's like, I mean, we went out to dinner the first night, and it was literally like, people had name tags for their Discord name out in front of them. Like, they made little, like, hey, I'm Necro Firewall. My real name is this. And it's like, people were meeting, and it was really, really cool, and like lots and lots and lots of pickup games happened. And we'll talk more about that, but just in general, for people that are like, I wanted to play in the tournament and I didn't get tickets, and I don't know if I'd get to have a good TI experience at Gen Con, I can assure you that even if you don't get tournament tickets in future years, there's plenty of TI to be had nowadays at Gen Con. You could spend your entire time only doing TI stuff.
And it seemed like some people did, basically.
Yeah, I think a good portion of our Discord people who were there spent the entire time organizing and playing games of TI.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what we did, the finals. And,
the big thing.
And we're not going to spoil the game right now.
Yeah, we really want you to watch it, so we're not going to
We really want you to watch it. We're going to talk about it just kind of from the perspective of what it was like to commentate that and what we kind of learned from it, how we felt about, just making that. I will say, really great matchup, really, really good players. We had, we're calling him GenCon Alex playing as Hakan. We had Robofish playing as Nalu. We had Schroeder playing as Sar. Naderade playing as Jolnar. We had Xenopheline. Is that right?
Yeah.
Playing as Soul, and then
you'll regularly hear us refer to Xenopheline as Farganess's son. Farganess is a much more active player in the community, and his son beat him in the prelims round, beat his own father to make it into the finals.
And then, of course, Magi was playing as Necro.
Yes.
So we had, two of our finalists from our tournament were present, which was super cool to see them playing in this context. It was really cool to see Schroeder play Sar, which we had never seen him play before.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, how did you feel, Matt? Let's start with you.
I'll say this first thing. I felt great because as a big I don't know, ego boost? I don't know what to call it, but all 6 of those players are like show people, like familiar with the show, listen to the podcast, and that alone just kind of feels good. It was fun to see. Last year was not that case at all, right? Last year it was like 2 of the finalists had any clue who we were.
Right.
And so just to see like that I don't know, that the community is there and that the good players are kind of all in the same section of it was very, very cool and very exciting, and it made the game almost more interesting just for me personally. And I hope that was reflected in the commentary of like, we were excited to see all these people and see what they could do against each other.
Yeah.
But outside of that,
I mean, 4 of the players we had, I would say, at least see them play once, if not several times before.
Yes. Right.
Like Naderade, we have played with Naderade. We of course saw Naderade in the tournament at one point. Robofish we saw in the tournament. Schroeder we got to see play many times in the tournament, and Magi. We've probably seen Magi play more than any individual player. We've probably seen more games with Magi than anybody. Basically.
Yeah. Now, all that being said, it was a totally different experience than like our Patreon tournament. If you've watched any of our videos on YouTube, most of them are the Patreon tournament. And the thing about the Patreon tournament is we had all the information. And it's one thing to just have all the information, but to even have access to the fact that there is secret information is different than what we had in this game. In this game, we did not have a very easy way to figure out how many secret objectives a person was holding and how many action cards they had. There were ways to get that information, but it was long and drawn out and generally not worth like digging into. So it was more about just seeing the action on the table and hearing what players were saying and basing our commentary off of that. But due to that, we missed all kinds of stuff. It's certainly not perfect commentary that like really captures everything that's going on. We were surprised by stuff a lot in that game. And I think it's a cool vibe, and I like that Gen Con offers that. Again, I'm constantly interested in every tournament having like a different vibe and a different feeling, because I think that's what TI is kind of about, is like, listen, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. And I think that this game is more about it being the experience of being at GenCon and this live event. It's like the only live big time game we may ever be able to do is GenCon, and everything else is either online or like a live game with like our friends who are definitely not as good as these players and stuff like that. So that's what makes this one special, is just like the context of it, and that's what makes me really pumped about it.
Yeah, it was interesting, the logistics of like there are a few things I feel like that as you watch the videos, we're like learning as you're watching it.
Yeah.
And one of them, and it seems pretty obvious, was we didn't have a very good way to communicate with the people working by the table.
Yeah.
Me and Matt are like separate, and by about halfway through, we got this really great system going of Root had like a big marker board, and he would write us messages.
Yeah. It was adorable and wonderful.
It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah. Basically, Root was acting as our like field producer, and he was the like, if we could have had an audio setup for this, which I don't think we ever will, but what it felt like was he was our man on the ground, and we would check in with him occasionally, and it would be like, let me tell you, folks, we've got a con over here, and he's got 6 action cards, and we're really afraid of what's going to happen next. But all of that was communicated through just hastily written messages that were like, you know, truncated into like 4 words of just like a message. It would just be like Hakan, secret, industrial, and you're like, oh, okay, let's figure that out and like understand all the context.
Yeah, and I will say this: if there are times when we seem really on it, which is probably not super frequently, but when we do seem really on it, it's because Root has written a very good point on the board, and we are just stealing. Like, we are just repeating the point that he has made without even giving him credit, because there's no time for that. Let's just throw it out there. It's like the news anchor like earpiece thing where we're just being fed lines, which is great.
Yeah. Any of the great insights we had into play, I think, are 100% attributable to Alec, and anything else, when it's just rambling, that's us just kind of figuring out what is going on.
Yeah. One thing that I think is really funny, and you will notice this right away, is the whole thing. I'm very proud of the thing as a whole, but it has a very awkward start.
Yeah.
Because we've set up this crazy series of cameras and everything, and we're all just like, how does this work?
Right.
Like for the first like 20 minutes. So the whole thing starts, and I'm literally like, oh God, we've started.
Yep.
And then we're like, all right, cut to camera 2, and it's just like zoomed in on Schroeder's face. And like, that's gonna live that. I mean, it's gonna be like that forever. Yeah. But it's crazy that even within the scope of the video, we get better at covering it.
Yeah, we didn't get to practice any of this beforehand. There just was no time, and we were working with people who like live across the entire United States. Like, we're everywhere. We were not in the same room until the night before, and you can bet we did not pre-set up our huge rig that takes 3 hours to set up. We didn't like try it all out. The only people who had ever messed with this thing were EJ and I. So the only people familiar with how this thing was kind of supposed to work were EJ and I, and we still had to figure it out on the fly. So yeah. I love that energy. I love that the whole thing is kind of just like, here we are, let's do it. But you can bet that next year will be more rehearsed, and maybe a little bit more clean, but at the same time, I love that it is sort of we're thrown into the mix here at GenCon. There's a billion other things going on at GenCon. We are one tiny part, and I think that this video is mostly about that.
Yeah. One specific thing I want to throw out. A lot of people have been commenting on the really cool backdrop that was behind me and Matt. That was a last minute addition by Farganus. He just brought that. Yeah. And it kind of makes the video, like, because every time it cuts back to me and Matt, which was probably going to be the lamest shot, there's just this really wicked awesome backdrop. And I just want to specifically say thank you again to Farganus for that, because it was perfect. It was literally perfect.
Huge improvement on the production quality, which is, all due to him.
And overall, this is a game that has. You should watch this game for so many reasons, but this is a game that has really exciting gambits in it.
Yep. Yes.
Some that pay off, some that wildly don't. There is a classic. Well, we know so and so's going to win, and we'll talk about that for an hour, and then. Oh, it's hot potato. Oh, right. Now it's over here. Now it's over here. Oh god. Oh wait, it's over. Wait, what? It's that type of game. And
I'll tell you that much. If you're watching through it and you got to like part 6 and started to get bored, don't
finish it.
Yeah, don't stop watching. This still is not spoiling anything, but I will just tell you, we as commentators were getting bored, and then in the last, I don't even know, maybe half hour, it was just like, oh crap, we got lazy, and it is time to pay way close attention to whatever is going on in this game because things are shaky. Yeah,
and there's a lot of really good goofs in it. I don't want to ruin any of the goofs. But there's some pretty funny stuff that happens that's really great.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to bring up with this video?
I think that's
Please
good.
watch it. Please watch it.
Please watch it. It's super great. And we put a lot of time into it, so I just really want you to watch it, okay?
Yeah. Honestly, you should watch it just to see what you paid for, basically. If you're on our Patreon... that setup, that's all you, baby. Like we didn't have all. I mean, that's you plus the stuff that EJ had already, and like it's such an amazing setup. That's something that I feel, almost cocky about. Like, we came up with a way to shoot TI that is very original, and not, as far as I know, never really been done before that.
It definitely feels that way, and it's something that we're not done improving. I mean, there's
there's
audio work to be done. There's figuring out better ways to just function the cameras. More for Hunter and I to do on an analysis side, like better things we can do with overlays. Yes. There's a lot of tech that we can still learn about and keep improving this. We are not done. This is not the holy grail of TI coverage. This is the first successful piece of the puzzle. Is the way I think of it.
Yeah. I feel closer than ever, though, to that TI video that I'm like, it's perfect, and now, and then the show will end, because it'll be like, this was the original goal, and then we do it, and then it's like, all right, now we can rest,
Maybe so.
And then we will, and we'll retire at 33, and...
rest on our laurels.
That's it. I did it. I did it.
Hey,
that's right. I'm saying I did it because I did it by myself.
Can we talk about the games that we played?
Yeah, so we played if you can believe it, we played a little bit of TI. We were able to fit it in. We both played as Soul, which was kind of silly, but we were working on that Soul guide, which you'll be getting very soon. Yeah. So that's something to look forward to. Also, in general, I just want to let you guys know this is the kind of end of our little GenCon arc. Right. And we are going to be getting back to the business of being super strategic and talking about strategy week by week. And it's actually really exciting. We're going to be getting back to our roots.
But yeah, these games were kind of directly contributing to the Soul Guide, and I think we both learned a lot about what we want to say about Soul, which is that we both kind of tried new stuff with Soul. And Hunter, how do you feel new stuff works with Soul?
I think Soul is a meat and potatoes faction. I think it's actually, I'm almost feeling like it's kind of a shame that we're starting with them, because I almost feel like the first round strategy guide is pretty solid for it in that this is what they do. I think that mostly what our new guide is going to be like is the kind of response to the overall meta of Soul and how do you expand that. But also there's been a series of pretty solid tricks that the community has added to Soul that we have shamelessly incorporated into our game that I think are worth talking about. Every game I've tried with Soul lately has been me trying to do something different, and that pretty much never goes well. It's really hard to get past the traditional grab Mechatol Rex as soon as you can, and then that is your bargaining chip with which to win the game.
Right.
basically.
It is a powerful planet, a powerful position, and a way to get points that you otherwise would not get. And it's just worth doing, even if you get a huge lead early out of it.
Right.
I think, and we'll talk about this more, but I really think Soul just leans into that aspect of their being. Because anytime I've tried to let me stay off the radar a little bit, I don't get the points I need, and then when the end game comes around, I'm not a part of it. And that's I would rather make the gambit and maybe get crushed, but a lot of times not get crushed because your ground forces frickin' rule, than miss out all the time because I didn't get the points I needed early enough and I'm just nowhere close enough anymore.
And also just not to get ahead of it too much, but I think the nature of orbital drop is more of a early game investment that pays off in the mid to late game than a all right, we're in the late game. Now it's time for me to orbital drop a whole bunch.
Exactly. You have to put the groundwork in.
It's something you should be doing as you go, which I think translates more to a take Mechatol early and keep it kind of strategy.
The biggest thing that occurs to me, and especially you saying that, is every time I try to do something different, I don't have command counters to do orbital drop with because I'm trying to do too many other things, which means my mid and late games suffer because I'm not as well defended. So why not just go with the thing that leads to the best defenses and gets me points anyways?
Yeah.
So we're going to keep analyzing that, and we're going to, we should say it now, we're going to be talking about that really actively on the Discord. So there's going to be a channel set up for, I guess I'm going to say it right now, episode 97, which is next week. That's the goal for Soul Guide. We're hoping to have it out next week, but we want to talk to everybody about it. We kind of want to pre-errata our thoughts and make sure we're not missing anything. So if you want, to contribute to what will be hopefully the end-all, be-all Soul Guide, that's, now's your chance to get in there and help us out.
And if this is kind of a weird thing to put to say, I think, on the show, but if you kind of know our thoughts on Soul, or if maybe you need a refresher, check out our first round strategy guide on it, and give us your thoughts on that, because it's not going to be a huge departure from what we said before.
Right.
So basically, it's going to be a refinement of that and an expansion of ideas as far as we really want to feel like after these strategy guide episodes, it's all right, that we've said what we have to say about the faction as it currently exists. Yeah. It's not a glossing over the first round and then with some thoughts going forward. This is going to be early game, mid game, late game.
Yeah.
Here's how we think it's played best.
Yeah.
Which is obviously never true in Twilight Imperium, but
You started to kind of word it a certain way. I really see these guides as kind of a response to our first round guides.
Yeah.
They are a continuation, which means, if there are new bases worth covering, we'll cover them. If it's a lot of the same information, we're not going to just sit there and retread it T for T. We're going to kind of we'll talk about the same things from a more generic standpoint and get through it. Hey, here's another fun.
Wait, I need to make one more point before we move on. So one thing that I think is kind of a bummer about the first round strategy guides, and it makes them difficult to listen to, is that because we mess so many things up, you need to listen to, you listen to the Soul episode, and then you need to listen to the next episode for all the errata for the Soul guide. The goal of putting the discussion out ahead of time is for you guys to go ahead and trash us before we make the episode. You know what I mean? Right. So if you've got thoughts, I really want to encourage you to get on the Discord and throw them at us, so that we can present an episode that's just it's our thoughts, your rebuttals, and our responses all in the same episode and already exist, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Here's another weird update. This is I asked the Discord beforehand who won what factions in the finals or in the prelims of GenCon, and I keep getting new updates. We were wrong about RoboFish. RoboFish won with Lizix. So again, live keeping score, it was 1 Jolnar, 1 Lizix, 2 Soul, 1 Necro, 1 Extra.
Crazy.
So there you go.
2 Soul, huh? That's wild.
So Hunter Donaldson.
It's weird because last year Soul did so poorly. In the
they
tournament.
They got dunked on very,
and they
very,
did kind of poorly
hard
in the Patreon tournament too. They did not do great.
Yeah, the Patreon tournament was not set up for Soul to hardly even exist. But then, yes, even when they did make it into games, they did not turn out very well.
Yeah, I agree. All right, where are you trying to take this now, boy?
I was taking you to last week's episode was all about game 2, but do we want to kind of touch on just like what's going on with game 2? We're starting to talk a lot about the future of the show, right? Which we do maybe too often, but just to let you know where the strategy side of this show is headed, I think it's worth giving an update.
Yeah. So basically, the update is we're still waiting on Dune with the intention of still covering Dune first, but in the meantime, we have been getting in some time with Root.
Yep.
I think we've had very different experiences. Basically, I am focusing on playing Marquise de Cat, which is a very accessible faction.
Yeah.
That I think is difficult to master. But I think I'm the right player for it, and I'm going to make the case for it right now. I am between me. I feel like if Matt played as the Cats, his brain might overheat from all the things that can be happening that are bad at once.
I have thoughts.
When you're playing as the Cats, it kind of feels like it always feels like you're losing a little bit, even when you're winning.
Yeah,
because you start the game and you rule every clearing except for one. Essentially,
right.
We're talking about the base game.
Yeah.
So you rule every clearing except for one. So basically, you can only go down from there as far as your ability to control, area. But thus far, I feel like I'm learning more and more about crafting and how to incorporate that into my game. I'm learning what areas of the map I prefer as playing the Cats, which is definitely not a Twilight Imperium thing, since the map is static.
Yep.
There are literal pockets on the map that I'm like, oh, I really like this area, and having a lot of control here and a lot of having my workshops here, I really like, and positioning buildings and stuff. So I feel like I am really excited about the Cats. I have yet to play with some very experienced Root players. I have kind of wisely decided to play with people that are also learning the game for the first time.
I think that is critical. That's kind of what I've been doing as well, honestly. But I do think if you play Root and one person is definitely better than everybody else, you're not going to have an even decent game for a while.
No.
The part of Root is discovering Root, and that's going to be the hardest. I'm really nervous about starting to cover Root. It's been freaking me out just because of how crazy of a game it is and how holistic it all is. Everything feels like an ecosystem that if one thing goes out of whack, the whole game becomes something completely different. My experience has been a lot. I've been playing way more with the expansion, which Hunter has not, and I think that has that has made our experiences night and day. It's a completely different game with the first Riverfolk expansion.
Right.
I've been playing as the Eerie, and I've been beating my head against a wall, but also that wall exists because every game we learn about one thing you're not supposed to let someone else do. So every game, even if I'm setting up my thing really well, someone else has this crazy runaway victory that ends in round 5 or 6. It's just way too fast. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Eerie is I don't really see a way that Eerie is that kind of faction. They don't just win really, really fast in a huge burst. They are more about a steady, constant accrual of points. You just get a good amount of points every single round, but you rarely have just a big sweep of points. This is just my baseline opinions. But because we keep having games where we're we didn't know we were supposed to not let the Vagabond do that, the games are thrown off because of it. So I'm still in very early stages of understanding how all of this game works together. And I think I'm about to transition into I need to just wrap my head around the base game, because I do think that's really important to be able to figure kind of anything out, is you really just need to know the base game first before you can introduce new systems.
I think it's helping me because I already feel like I am learning a lot about these 4 factions. And I think that's something that originally when we talked about, so we're probably gonna have to talk about Root some in the future. We were we'll do it like Twilight Imperium. We'll just we'll hand the factions out. We'll split them up between the two of us.
Yeah.
And we'll each try and master them. I don't think I'm going to be able to write any first looks at any of these factions until I've played them all.
Yep.
Actually,
Yeah, exactly.
I think
you
that's
have
actually
to know
true.
everything that's going on, because it's not enough to talk about what your faction does to win. You also have to talk about how your faction deals with preventing the other factions from winning. That is a crucial element in the game that cannot be ignored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is definitely going to be a challenge in covering Root. I don't worry, Root is on the back burner anyways, though.
Yep.
So I mean, we definitely are committed to doing Dune first because it was the rightful winner.
Right. Well, and also I think we are more prepped for just like the kind of game that Dune is. Root is so complicated and complex that we as players just have a lot more to learn before we have any business talking about it on the show.
Mm-hmm. I was actually very relieved by seeing Dune and being like, okay, I remember this.
Yes,
I remember how this works, and so I'm really excited to sink my teeth into that. So yeah, the Gale Force 9, get us those copies we ordered as soon as they show up. We are ready to talk about this game. Are we ready to just talk about the kind of all the other stuff? Basically?
Just the rest of GenCon. Yeah, we've been getting into stuff, but
so
it's
we're gonna
noting.
do the thing now that we do once a year where we pretend we're like a regular board game podcast, and we're just gonna talk about a bunch of random games. So, you know, I get it if you're like, oh, this is not what I'm here for, but we're gonna do that. So let's have a little bit of fun and pretend we are just two wannabe journalists talking about all types of games.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What do we want to start with?
I think we start with some of the just like quick like rundown stuff.
Sure.
You're an RPG boy at heart, even though you almost never get to play them. You just love reading.
That's
RPG
not
books.
true. I'm in a weekly D&D group right now,
I guess. But you spent a long time just reading RPG books and waiting for the day that you could get a group together.
I definitely read more RPG books than I get to play. But there were two things in particular that I very much wanted to pick up and like kind of rushed for. The first one was the Monster of the Week expansion. I'm a big fan of Monster of the Week, the RPG, and the fact that an expansion came, or I don't know if I would call it an expansion. It's just like another book with more stuff in it. It's a really cool book. It is not solely written by Michael Sands, who wrote the first book. It is basically like a community amalgamation of all these different things that the community is basically kind of Frankensteined into a new book. So it's got a lot of different takes on Monster of the Week. It's also got 4 new character types basically that you can play as. They're called playbooks in Monster of the Week, and they are each really, really, really cool. And I would encourage anybody that's curious about Monster of the Week to check it out and try it. It's a very approachable RPG system. It's a lot better than the Twilight Imperium RPG, I'll tell you that much. And what I really like about games like Monster of the Week is that they are RPG games that encourage good story moments in the mechanically, basically.
Yeah.
One of the problems that I have with D&D is that a lot of times you can get a little bit lost in the weeds as far as like story-wise what's happening, because you could spend so much time thinking about like min-maxing certain move sets or like making sure that, you know, one time I was playing and my DM was like, all right, today we're going to buy items. And I was like, okay. And he wanted us to shop, and my group spent 2 hours shopping.
Oh my gosh.
And to me, I was like, this is not what me as a player, that's not what I'm looking for.
Right.
If anything, I would much rather even be told, hey, you bought this item. Here's what it is.
Well, for you,
and it's
more
imbued
about
with some sort of story importance.
Right. You want a scene where you get to actually talk to the shopkeeper and like be sold on something, and that's a story element of that item now has some importance, rather than just like, I want to deck out my character with some stuff.
Yes. On the I guess I feel like there's a spectrum of RPG players. There's like the kind of computer game RPG side of it, where it's like kind of people that are wanting a little bit of that video gamey experience, that kind of crunchy number experience. And then there's the like, I'm going to call it like improv theater types.
Yeah.
I'm on the improv theater side, like way far. I don't like it to be full on, like that game Fiasco is a little too much RPG with like basically no mechanics, and that puts me off a little bit. I definitely like my games
Right.
So Monster of the Week and in general, Powered by the Apocalypse games are kind of the perfect compromise for me. Another thing I picked up that I'm really excited about is the Cyberpunk Red Jumpstart Kit by R. Talsorian Games. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but it was a pretty nice little kit. I got like a lot of dice. It gives you like some cardboard pieces to use, and it's a pretty light rule book. But I think it's intended to just kind of be like a little sneak peek at Cyberpunk Red. That I bet I won't even get to play it before Cyberpunk Red comes out proper.
Yeah,
But
right.
I also bought the old Cyberpunk book to just kind of read, to kind of prep for that. So that was essentially my special little my hunter's time.
That's
at
your
Gen
GenCon haul. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my Gen Con haul.
I only cared about like one other thing outside of TI, and like our schedule was pretty packed. But the one other thing, and I didn't even know it was actually going to have like a presence. I hadn't been keeping up with it recently, but the Trogdor board game, which people that know me personally know that I have a history with the website Homestar Runner and very much love it with like a ridiculous fascination. And they made a board game. And I've just been freaking out about it for like a year now. I tried to. They were supposedly at Gen Con last year, and I could not ever find them or find a booth that related to them. And this year they were like there in full force with released copies. And more importantly, the Brothers Chaps, who are the creators of Homestar Runner, which is just, I don't know, I'm not giving enough details, but it's like an old web comic or web flash animation series that was just like a big deal in the mid to late aughts. They have a dumb, goofy cooperative board game, and they were there. And I'm not a person who like wants to take pictures with celebrities, or even necessarily like I want to meet them and shake their hand, but to just like see them. They were there at the booth and like playing the game, and they have this dumb Strong Bad puppet, and they just sit there and like commentate people playing the game, and he just sits there and like it's like Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets. He's just like, burning these people playing this game and having really dumb commentary. And it was just really great. And that's like my only highlight of non-show related stuff. Well, one of two highlights. We've got another thing to talk about, but just been freaking out about the Trogdor game that I haven't even gotten to play yet, but just love that it exists and love that this thing from my childhood is like being reinvigorated with such furor.
Yeah. That's funny because I don't know anything about that. Like it's just this thing that you've liked it as long as I've known you, and I never ever checked it out or anything. It's
really
actually kind of weird now that I think about it.
One of the best comedy things. It's like one of the most influential things on me comedically ever. And yeah, I'm surprised that you never got into it because it's kind of perfect.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It would be really weird if I got into it now. I'm like turning 30 this year.
A little late, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the really cool game we got to test that is not out yet. But we, last year, we went to, I forget what the company is called. Tim Fowers Games?
Is just Fowers. Yeah, it's Fowers Games.
Fowers Games. So we went and we met this game designer, Tim Fowers, who made a game that we really like called Burgle Bros.
Yep.
He also made a game called Now Boarding, which we picked up and I've played several times and really like. It's like an airplane management game where you're like flying around the country. But we got to play test Burgle Bros 2 with Tim Fowers this year, which was like a really cool experience.
Yep.
And the Kickstarter launched for that recently?
Just this last week. It is up now. You should totally look up Burgle Brothers 2 and back it because holy cow, that game is awesome. The thing to say about Tim Fowers is like he does smaller games. Like if you're just into normal hobby board games, he's by far my favorite designer out there because he is like a master of theme. His games are funny and the mechanics make you laugh because they tie in so perfectly with the theme he's trying to get at. And it's always like some like true to life thing. Burgle Brothers is about like a heist movie, and Now Boarding is just, you're literally playing as air traffic control, and it is wicked fun. Like all of his games just have these incredibly charming artwork with really funny theme, and he's a super funny person himself. So it was just awesome to get to like hang out with him and talk about one of our favorite games with him, and kind of give our insights on how Burgle Brothers 2 feels to play. So just a really exciting thing to have been a part of.
Let's explain Burgle Bros 2 for people that maybe haven't played Burgle Bros 1 or just don't know anything about anything we're talking about right now. Burgle Bros 2 essentially is a like class-based cooperative game. It kind of reminds me, if you've ever played the video game Monaco, it's kind of like that. So like each person will play as like there's like a hacker, and there's actually there's a lot of really weird. Now that I think about it, a lot of the classes are very strange. Like there's one called like, is it called the Raven or the Rook?
The Raven. There's also the Rook. There's both.
Right. So the Raven just like sends out a crow that can do like various, like you can like teleport to the crow or like have the crow get in the way. And so there's lots of like fun little classes like that. And the way the board is set up, it's all these squares, these tiles, and then like you can set up like walls and doors in between them. So you are basically exploring this space that's just like a grid of squares. Yep. However, you can't tell what a square is without peeking at it or moving to it. And some of the squares have, whenever you enter, these are representing like rooms that you're going to. Each room kind of has like a different effect. Some of them are bad, some of them are good. A lot of them are bad. So it's kind of just you disaster managing while you try and find a safe, break into it, and steal the treasure, basically.
Yeah. The whole game ends up feeling like as if you are a less professional Ocean's 11. Like if Ocean's 11 was about people who kind of sucked at their job, like you're doing things and you feel smart, but then really crazy, terrible things will happen, and you just are trying to fix the problems that came up. My favorite thing about it is a lot of co-op games just feel like a constant pressure of everything's building up, and then at the end you either win or you just barely don't, but it felt super, super close. Burgle Brothers in general, and especially Burgle Brothers 2, it's more like it comes in waves. You're doing really well, and then something terrible happens, and it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, we're completely doomed.
Right.
But then you come out of it, and you have another arc of like, okay, well, we can pick our feet back up, and now you just come back and down, and it's just such a roller coaster, which is way more engaging as a game, just because it constantly keeps you interested in what's going to happen next. Every tile you flip over is going to completely change the game, and it's just like super, super thematic. And the best thing about this one is he's leaned even more into the theme of it, which is to say, basically the plot of a game of Burgle Brothers is you need to find a safe that you're going to learn the code to and open up that safe. And that's like kind of like your first main mission. The thing that's different in Burgle Brothers 2 is once you've unlocked that safe, it's like a new mini game starts, and you have to just get out with whatever weird situation has been laid on you. And each game will have a different situation. For us personally, and I won't spoil too much, but like opening up the safe revealed this really nice car that we needed to drive out of the building. And there were all these new mechanics introduced at us at
completely
the last minute.
Rules.
Yeah, where we had to just figure out how to get this car out of this building based on these new rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Burgle Bros 1 had like a little bit of that flavor to it, in that in Burgle Bros 1 you would find the treasure, and then the treasure would have like a specific like rule set to it, but a lot of them were really simple and kind of straightforward. This is like you open the treasure and now the game has fundamentally new rules for the finale, and it's a lot more exciting, and it's very much like a taking things that worked in Burgle Bros 1 and really just turning them up like quite a bit. Very, very, very interesting game, and it was super fun to play. And so I would encourage anybody that has any interest in what we're talking about to check out the Kickstarter for Burgle Bros 2, and just pick up Burgle Bros 1 even if you're interested.
You
that game is still really solid.
Yeah. That was a weird thing for us, Hunter. We just like talked about a bunch of board games like a normal board game podcast.
Yeah, we did.
I feel weird about it. Yeah.
How weird. Maybe this week, if you want to rate us on iTunes, rate us as a normal board game podcast. Very normal, regular, meat and potatoes, ma and pa board game podcast.
Talk about how confused you were. You didn't realize we were on the Dice Tower network. What's going on there?
Whoa, yeah. Well, don't comment and say that we're on the Dice Tower
Please
network.
don't do that.
That would make us look very weird. Like we were trying to get a job with them by just having people say that we already have the job. That's
because
odd.
we have Dune coming up, you can say we're on the Spice Tower network. Hey!
No, you better mark Matt, you better mark the time code down for that because you are cutting that out of the show. That is not going in there.
It's going in.
All right. Well, I need to learn to edit so that I can drive this car a little further. But you can rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts /iTunes. You can check out our Twitter, Space Cats Pod, for game updates and announcements. You can check our Facebook, so you can send Matt questions at night when he's trying to sleep. You can check out our weekly posts on the Twilight Imperium subreddit. That's how you can get a lot of discussion, good old discussion in. You can check out our Patreon, which we are going to be getting back on track with all the Patreon tiers. It always gets kind of thrown off every year by GenCon, but that excuse is over now. So we are... going to be hitting you with Galactic Council episodes, Goodyear Brotherhood games, streams again, everything. Space Kitty episodes, all those good things.
And you can also find us on our Discord and hang out and talk to us, especially about our upcoming Soul Guide. And you get a lot of Patreon benefits on Discord, but in general, just come be a part of the conversation, and you can directly help contribute to our new faction strategy guides, which is going to be a big movement moving forward for us.
And please send in your thoughts. Like, the way these strategy episodes are going to work are very different from the ones before, in that the community's feelings on Soul will be incorporated into it, and it will be like it's our voice and your voice having a dialogue, and that's what the guide is. So it'll be us saying, this is how we play it, and then you saying, that's not very good and that's bad, and then us saying, okay, well, we're going to add something to that, but then that will just kind of sit there. So I want it to feel very ultimate. Like, this is it. This is the list. This is the thoughts.
To add to that, even you can, if you're not like a Discord person, feel free to email us spacecatpeaceturtles@gmail.com and just give us your write-up of like your thoughts on Soul, and if there's something in it where we go, I never thought about that, boom, you've added and helped make the guide better.
Yes, and of course we will always give credit. Like we're not going to use something you say without actually giving you credit for it. We always do that, and we always will continue to do that. And we love this community so much for how much you guys have given to us to basically use in the show. Has been amazing.
Absolutely. And that's it. We're done with Gen Con, Hunter. This officially makes us done with Gen Con related stuff. It's like been the past however many months, and we made it. We made it out on the other side.
# Gen content is officially over, starting now. I can't wait for Gen Con next year, when we're going to get one more camera that we're going to point specifically at Schroeder's extra-dimensional pocket where he keeps trade goods, presumably. He's always got those. Right. I wonder if Schroeder keeps trade goods from other games that he played. I would imagine that Schroeder would do that, would be like, well, these are the trade goods that I accrued, and even though I did not win the game, I'm going to keep these as a token, a souvenir, so that I remember. I just imagine him with a big bag of trade goods at home.
He takes them to his carrot monger, and his carrot monger says, aha, for 4 trade goods, you get 4 pounds of carrot.
Yes, we didn't even mention that, but he definitely bought those carrots with trade goods.
Thank you for listening to Space Cats Peace Turtles, and thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.